Well, hello. Good Saturday afternoon or evening, actually, depending on where you are. Hope everybody's having a, a good weekend so far. I think this is my first YouTube live stream that I've done by myself. So let's see how I do. So yeah, basically just wanted to talk about a few different issues. Some you've seen me talk about on Twitter, and others you've seen me talk about on the Red and Black show that dropped earlier this morning. And but I had some other things that I wanted to talk about as well. So you go ahead and pull up my thing here. All right. So I'm just going to let a few more people come in. Hello, Marlene. How are you? Steven Sams, you're hoping the Braves would win this game before this dropped. Well, I don't pay attention to baseball, so I don't know anything about it. I was watching Fight Night this afternoon. So there's going to be three things that I really want to talk about today. I want to talk about the McLoskeys, obviously the couple that was on their front lawn when that Black Lives Matter protest was going through their gated community. And then I also want to talk a little bit about some Texas politics here, but I'm going to relate it to the GOP overall. So, but this certain situation was more relegated to Texas, but I thought it was pretty interesting. So see what you guys think about it. Let's see. Okay, more people coming in. How you doing, Christine? Queen, nice to see you. Marlene, a heat wave tomorrow. That sucks. It was actually kind of warm here today, but then it just started raining, and then it just stopped raining just now. So it's kind of weird. That's Texas weather for you. But yeah, I want to talk about the McLoskeys, some Texas politics, and I want to talk about what the left is doing, what the progressive left is doing as far as their whole anti-police and defund the police initiative, and how it's impacting people, and basically just some new developments that have happened, especially like in Seattle and in Portland. So yeah, so I'm going to start with the McLoskeys, and you probably have already heard the St. Louis Attorney General is filing felony charges against the couple for brandishing their weapons. So I'm going to just kind of read from the article here from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. So Kim Gardner, who is the St. Louis Circuit Attorney, and she's also a Democrat, and she basically announced on Monday that she was going to be charging the McLoskeys for using their firearms. So it's basically, the report says Mark and Patricia McLoskey each are facing a single felony count of unlawful use of a weapon exhibiting. Charging documents say that he pointed this is the husband. Charging documents say that he pointed an AR-15 rifle at protesters, and she wielded a semi-automatic handgun, placing those protesters in fear of injury. Now, Gardner released a statement saying it is illegal to wave weapons in a threatening manner at those participating in nonviolent protest. And while we are fortunate this situation did not escalate into deadly force, this type of conduct is unacceptable in St. Louis. So, first of all, since then, I actually found out or heard that the handgun that Patricia McLoskey was carrying wasn't even, I mean, she couldn't even fired it. It wasn't a functional weapon. So they had basically had to take it apart and then put it back together so that it would fire. So even if she wanted to shoot somebody in that situation, she couldn't have. But this whole thing is ridiculous. Now, I'm not surprised that they were charged. I knew that this was going to happen because they want to start taking some heads, basically. And they want to send a message to the rest of the nation. If you move to defend yourself against Black Lives Matter, even if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, you can get punished for it. So now I don't think that they'll get convicted. I could be surprised, but I don't think that that'll happen. But I'm not at all shocked that they got charged. And this is 100% politically motivated. The McLoskeys didn't hurt a single person. And here's the thing. If Gardner was so concerned about justice and punishing somebody for wrongdoing, she also would have levied charges against the protesters who broke into that private community. They broke down the gate. That's vandalism. I'm sure that's some type of vandalism under Missouri state law. And then they were trespassing that whole time. Nobody was charged with anything. Nobody was punished, and nobody is going to be held accountable. She focused only on the McLoskeys, who basically were afraid. Now, I've said it many times before. I would not have gone out into the lawn like that. I would have been on edge, and they had every right to be on edge. I mean, I probably would have stayed in the house, had my guns at the ready just in case. But I'm not going out onto my front lawn like that, because realistically, that can make the situation worse. What if they rushed him? Yeah, they might shoot a few, but the rest are going to get you. So if you're really afraid for your life, you don't want to do something that's going to cause the situation to get worse. But again, they were afraid, and I can understand why they were afraid. And again, they didn't hurt a single person. They just went out onto their lawn, and that was it. So in that case, they had a reason to fear that there could be a possible threat. I don't think that it was to the case where they needed to panic or anything like that, because a lot of the Black Lives Matter protesters are peaceful. At the same time, if you've been hearing in the news for the past few months that activists working with Black Lives Matter are engaging in violence, you're going to be a little afraid, even if you're on their side, because the McLoskeys are actually Democrats who support Black Lives Matter. But the media isn't telling you that for obvious reasons. So basically, it wasn't the fact that they had gone out on their lawn and with guns. It's the fact that they did it when it involved Black Lives Matter. I'm pretty sure if there was some other type of protest that had nothing to do with this, and they did that same thing, they probably wouldn't have even gotten charged. This is meant to send a message about the national Black Lives Matter movement, which, as we know, is a Marxist, white, progressive-led organization at this point. And basically, they're trying to say, hey, you're going to be punished if you dare to go against Black Lives Matter. Now, there are other ways that the left is doing this as well, like, as far as in the media and other ways that they would target people for going against their agenda. They've been doing it for years, but this is just another instance of that. And here's the thing. What kind of precedent does this set? I mean, let's say the McLoskeys do get convicted. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But what does this mean for other people? I mean, what if you live in Minneapolis or you live in Seattle and Black Lives Matter is wilding out doing their thing, and let's say you own your own business and they're torching stuff, throwing bombs or fireworks or whatever, and you come out with a gun and threaten them, like, you better stay away from my business or something bad's going to happen. What kind of precedent does that set? I know that might be in a different state and different legal system, but when it comes to the culture, when it comes to society, if a prosecutor, a left-leaning prosecutor in another city, sees that Kim Gardner is able to prosecute these people, maybe they would say, hey, maybe we can do that here to make sure that people don't threaten these activists, regardless of what they're doing. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, what if these were right-leaning protesters? Let's flip the script on it. Let's say that right-leaning protesters, let's say they're advocating for the Second Amendment, and they go through a neighborhood and to go to the house of a gun control advocate, of a politician who wants to have more gun control, and then other residents come out of their lawn. Let's say they're Black residents, because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know who these people are. Same scenario. Would we see them getting convicted or even charged? No, of course not. Those three facts are how I know that this is politically motivated. This has nothing to do with justice. This has nothing to do with law and order. This has to do with, you messed up. You came out against Black Lives Matter. You are now the face of the opposition to Black Lives Matter because the media has turned you into that, and we need to punish you. This is the kind of thing that we're going to have to be looking out for more going forward, because I don't think that these riots are going to let up anytime soon. I don't think that a lot of these protests, even the peaceful ones, I don't think that they're going to be letting up anytime soon. I mean, there are a lot of people out there still advocating for George Floyd, and I've been seeing a little bit more of an uptick in people talking about the Breonna Taylor case, because they haven't arrested any of the officers involved in the no-knock raid. So as this stuff continues, we can expect to see more instances where people might buck up against Black Lives Matter, or maybe they just even say the wrong thing and they get targeted by the mob. I mean, the McLoskeys, it's not just legal trouble that they're facing. I wrote an article about this basically when that whole thing jumped off. They're trying to attack their business. So they went and posted their Yelp, the Yelp profile of their law firm, which they also expose that too. They expose the address. So we all know exactly what their law firm is and what it does. And basically they targeted their Yelp page. And if you go to it, you'll see tons of reviews. You can just scroll right through them. And they're all one-star reviews saying these people are racist. These people threaten black people. They threaten Black Lives Matter. They pulled guns when they shouldn't have, yada, yada, yada. You probably already get the idea. So this is yet, I mean, we can talk about cancel culture, but I mean, that's basically what this is. But this is something even more dangerous because, I mean, they could probably go to jail. I don't know what the sentence, the type of sentencing is for that type of felony, but they're going to be harmed legally and their business is going to be harmed. Now, financially, they might still be okay. I mean, they may have other, assets or whatever. I'm sure they'll be fine. But the fact remains, what if they weren't wealthy? How would that affect them? The progressive left is more than willing to ruin your life if you step out of line or if you don't comply with what they demand. So this whole situation is just another indicator of that. Let's see. Yes, Stephen Sam, they were lawfully protecting their private property. It doesn't matter if any homes have been broken into yet. That's true. You've got a crowd full of strange people that you don't know. They broke down the gate. And you've been hearing on the news about what a lot of Black Lives Matter protesters have been doing. I can understand why they came out like that. Even if I wouldn't have done it, I can understand why they did. Queen Gardner is a Soros DA. You and your Soros conspiracy theories. She probably is, though. I haven't done any research, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we all know about Soros's involvement with the National Black Lives Matter movement. I won't go too much into that, but we know that basically, and I'll talk about this later in this video, but the National Black Lives Matter movement is just white progressives in political blackface. You've seen me tweet that. You've seen me say that, and I'm going to keep saying it. So that's pretty much what I need to say on that. I mean, it's sad because I know that this is going to keep happening again. It may not be with people standing on their front lawns, but this whole thing always takes different forms, right? I mean, it's not always. Sometimes it's not always in real life. Sometimes it's on social media, or if you make a video that they don't like or whatever. So I'll comment on those as it comes, but we need to keep pushing back against this. And realistically, I think that it's stuff like this that's going to. It's not doing the Democrats any favors. I mean, we were talking about that on the show as well. This stuff plays with their far left audience, and I think that's pretty much it. I think that the more moderate and more sensible Democrats or liberals, more people who are more centrist, and obviously people on the right, they're getting turned off by it. So even if you're on the right and you don't like Trump, you're not going to go over there because they're nuts. And they have shown that they are willing to destroy you if you don't comply with what they want. And they do it over such silly things that I think that in November, it's going to hurt them. I don't know how this election is going to turn out. I don't know, Biden's going to win or Trump is going to win. I expect a lot of Democrats to stay home. I don't think that that will be the case with Republicans, but who knows if that'll be enough. It also depends on who says more stupid crap. It depends on, whether Trump does something really stupid or if he does something really good. That will all have an influence. But stuff like the case with the McLoskeys, this type of behavior, and from what I'm seeing, it's not helping them at all. But I mean, there's a saying. I mean, if your enemy is destroying themselves, don't interrupt. So there you have it for that, as far as that goes. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Texas Republican Party, and unless you're in Texas and you're really in tune with the politics, you might not know about this, but the Texas GOP chair was up for election this year, and the previous guy's name was James Dickey, and he was the incumbent, and Colonel Allen West, if you're familiar with him, was running against him. So Colonel Allen West used to be a congressman, and he's very deeply involved in the Republican Party. He's a black conservative. He does a lot of commentary, and he served in the military, so he's pretty well known. He's originally from Florida, I believe, but he moved here to Texas a few years ago. He was actually in a motorcycle accident recently, so he was okay, but that happened like a few months ago. But very popular on the right. And so he ended up winning the election. So he beat James Dickey, and now he is the head of the Texas Republican Party. So what I thought was interesting here is the response of Texas Democrats, like the Texas Democratic Party. There's just a few things that I thought were kind of funny, but I did think that there was something that they said, even though they were wrong with what they said, they were kind of right in other areas. So basically, they said that they were disgusted with the pick. They were disgusted that West won, because there's so much about inclusion. I mean, they're always bashing the Republican Party for being the party of old white men, but then they're mad about a black guy getting a position of leadership. Okay, so basically, here's their quote. This guy named Abi Rahman. He's a communications director for the Texas Democratic Party. He said, "We're disgusted, but not surprised that Texas Republicans chose a certified racist conservative hardliner like Allen West as their new chairman." Where does one go to get certified as a racist conservative hardliner? It's like they make this stuff up and they don't even think about it before they say it. Anyway, he continues. West is everything that is wrong with the Republican Party and brings to light their failures on building an inclusive, welcoming party that is deliberate and thoughtful in handling crisis situations. He'll fit right in with the modern day Texas Republican Party. So Allen West, a black man being elected to a position of leadership, brings to light the failure of the Republican Party to be an inclusive and welcoming party. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let's just say this. If I were running the Democratic Party, I would fire this guy for saying something this stupid. Like there are better ways to criticize this than to be so blatantly dumb with it. Like, you can't pretend like you care about diversity, but then get mad when somebody exhibits diversity. So I don't get it. So, and on top of that, they call him a racist. Now, according to the rules, isn't racism power plus prejudice? Yeah, Allen West is in a position of power as far as taking over the chairmanship, but he's still a minority, so he can't be racist. So again, these people change the definition whenever it benefits them. They don't know what the hell racism is because they don't care. Racism, and I've said this before, the progressive left does not care about racism. Take that to the bank. They don't want to end racism. They don't want to fight it. They don't care about it. They love it because it's a great political weapon for them. Now, I'm sure a lot of the rank and file people are more sincere about it, but when it comes to the leadership, no, the media, they don't care about racism. So, but here is where they kind of have a point when it comes to the overall Republican Party as far as inclusivity. So this might be a little controversial for some of y'all, but I think most of y'all will be okay. Let's see. So Colonel West is a Democrat kryptonite. The smears against murder. Yeah, he is. And no, Queen, he's not a trans unicorn mermaid. Where do you come up with this stuff? I'm kind of worried about you. Anyway, so he is right, or the Democratic Party is right in one instance, but it doesn't have anything to do with Allen West. They have been kind of exclusionary, especially the Texas GOP. So earlier this year, I saw a story, and I even wrote about it for RedState.com. But when the state GOP was having their convention, they usually have different groups that can be involved in it, that can have booths where people can go get information and network, that kind of thing, as well as other stuff that they do. And there's a group called the Log Cabin Republicans, and if you've been in the conservative world for a while, you know who they are. They're a right-leaning, they're a conservative Republican LGBT group, basically. So basically, these are members of the LGBT community who share common values like a limited government, lower taxes, basically a liberty, the government staying out of your business, that kind of thing. They have a lot of areas of solidarity with us. And they have been applying for years to try to be able to participate in the convention that takes place in Texas every year, and they get rejected every time. And this year they got rejected again, although there seemed to be more people who were advocating for allowing them to be part of the event. And so this is kind of an issue, and I think this would apply to other state GOP Republican parties, but I mean in Texas it's been an issue because, as you know, a lot of conservatives, most conservatives are Christians, and they're a lot of them are from the evangelical persuasion. So to them, they see it as, well, if you let these people in, that means that it goes against our beliefs, and we're affirming their lifestyle. Now, people can feel whatever they want about it. I mean, whatever you believe that the Bible says about it, that's what you believe. But it doesn't seem to me to be very wise, because the conservative movement isn't about having the government being involved in religion or in religious beliefs. We're supposed to protect religious beliefs, but there are plenty of members of the LGBT community that are right-leaning that don't want to force people to bake the cake. I mean, you know that we all know that story. So to me, it doesn't make sense to be more exclusionary, because where are they going to go if we're not even letting them be part of our movement? They're going to either go nowhere, or they're going to go to the Democrats, who will accept them with open arms. And to me, I don't have to believe in what somebody does or what somebody believes in order to stand with them when it comes to pushing for limited government, pushing for freedom, pushing for the Constitution, First Amendment, Second Amendment, and the rest. That doesn't really have any bearing on it. And so this is yet just one area in which the Texas GOP has exhibited this tendency that it's not going to help it, especially since the Democrats are getting a lot more competitive in Texas, and they are trying to turn the state purple. They are doing a full court press. They're doing what I say that the Republican Party should be doing in Black communities. They're not afraid, like, you know, the spineless people that we have in the GOP right now. But I digress. There was another issue too, and I think this happened last year, and I can't remember which city or county this was in, but the county GOP had basically elected somebody in a position of leadership, but there was a big outcry against it, and people ended up trying to go through legal means to keep this guy from getting the job. Why? Because he was a Muslim. And they based their actions solely on the fact that he is a Muslim. And it ended up failing. So he is, as far as I know, he's still in that position. And I should have looked up before this, but it just kind of occurred to me. But basically, this guy was going to not have his job because of his religion. Just straight out blatant religious discrimination. So, and I understand that this is really a carryover from the neocon days and, you know, the early days. And I know a lot of this stuff is changing. The conservative movement is evolving on this issue and a lot of others, but we need to keep up that evolution. I mean, because we can't afford to exclude people right now, especially, you know, with the demographics changing. The conservative movement needs to open its arms. Again, to me, conservatives already disagree on issues anyway. So bringing in more people that might have other disagreements with us, as long as they're about limited government and the Constitution and protecting us from the government, I mean, I don't care what else I disagree with you on. I mean, those can be interesting conversations and they could be important, but the foundational principles are what is essential. So there is no reason to have this exclusionary approach when it's not necessary. We're not compromising our values by aligning with people who want the same things that we want. So yeah, that was pretty much what I wanted to say there. But yeah, no, actually, even more than that. I mean, I have another note here. Basically, you know, this is the kind of thing that drives people away from the Republican Party. And I'm talking about the LGBT community. This is one of the things that drives them away, because they see this horrible tendency on our part to exclude them when there's really no need to. Because I think a lot of them probably have values in common with us, but they're not going to come over if we're always going to be dragging them or ignoring them or refusing to interact or pretending like they have some agenda. And now I get that there is an LGBT agenda, and that's a whole other subject. But I'm talking for basic purposes. I'm not seeing the reason why this is a wise move. I mean, we're already alienating minorities for no good reason other than being stubborn and wanting to hold to stupid narratives. We can't afford to do this anymore, basically. Like, the conservative movement needs to look more like what America looks like. And right now it doesn't. I do think that that's changing. But if you look at, who we have in Congress, I mean, people on the right will rag on Democrats for only having 2 senators. Okay, but what about in the House of Representatives? How many representatives do they have that are minorities? They only have 2 black senators in the Senate, but how many do they have in the House? How many do we have? We've got to make some changes here. Like, we can't keep pretending like the Democrats aren't diverse when we clearly aren't, and not even trying to be. So basically, I think that as more of us kind of change our thinking on this and being loud about it, I think that eventually we can push the GOP to kind of reform and change. With the current leadership that we have right now, they don't want black votes. They don't want Hispanic votes. They only want one type of vote, and you already know what that is. But the rank and file people don't necessarily agree with that. So the more pressure that we can put on them to do the right thing, or putting pressure on the party to remove them and put the people in who actually want the Republican Party to still be relevant in a few decades, I think that that's what will affect change. Otherwise, the Democrats are just going to be in control, and we'll be a socialist nation in no time. So the last thing that I want to discuss would be this whole thing that's going on in Portland, that's going on in Seattle. I wrote about both of these cities today. And, it's just the whole anti-police movement that we have going on. And to me, there are a lot of layers to this. So I'm going to start with Portland. And basically, what has happened is, I'm sure you've heard, there have been riots, protests, all kinds of violent demonstrations. The defund the police movement is going strong. I don't think it has affected any legislative change yet, but that is what they're pushing for. But what is interesting to note about this is that the people in Portland who are participating in a lot of the violence, who are pushing for defunding the police, who are attacking police officers and people who don't agree with them, the majority of them are white. These people say they're Black Lives Matter, but they're white. Now, I'm sure that last week you probably heard that video that came out with the officer Jakari Jackson. He was a black police officer and basically was talking about how he's seeing in these groups and these demonstrations, most of them are white and there are very few minorities, which makes sense. It's Oregon. I mean, Oregon is very white. I'll just say that. But at the same time, he talked about how when the black activists would go up to him and talk to him and try to engage in dialogue, these white activists would jump up and say, no, don't talk to him. So that's why I say this movement is being run by white progressives who don't really care about safeguarding Black lives. Their actions show it. You can't say that you're about saving Black lives when you're destroying Black communities deliberately. When you're rioting, when you're busting things up for no reason, and then making it look like it's Black people because you're doing it under the banner of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, you're not slick. I know what you guys are doing. We all know. But anyway, the local NAACP chapter, the president of that chapter wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post. I think it was published on Thursday. And he is basically calling this stuff out. And basically he called it a white spectacle. And he was noting how most of this stuff is being done by white people who have co-opted the movement for their own purposes that have nothing to do with Black people. So he talks about, I'll read from what he said. He talked about that naked Athena, who's that naked white lady who got naked and spread her legs in front of police, and they ran away, basically. I could say something here, but I'm not going to. Yeah, I am. If let's just say, ladies, if you get naked and men run away from you, you might want to rethink your life. I'm just saying. Anyway, this is what he wrote. He wrote images of naked Athena. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Images of naked Athena, as the protester have been labeled, have gone viral. Her unclothed confrontation with police earning her accolades as a brave ally, of course, a brave ally of the cause. But I see something else. A beneficiary of white privilege dancing vainly on a stage that was originally created to raise up the voices of my oppressed brothers and sisters. So, yeah, she's taking the stage. She's showcasing herself. It has nothing to do with Black lives, which is obvious to anybody watching it. In another passage, he writes, unfortunately, spectacle is now the best way to describe Portland's protests. Vandalizing government buildings and hurling projectiles at law enforcement draw attention. But how do these actions stop police from killing Black people? What are Antifa and other leftist agitators achieving for the cause of Black equality? The quote-unquote wall of moms, while perhaps well-intentioned, ends up redirecting attention away from the urgent issue of murdered Black bodies. He is absolutely right. And as you already know, the leadership of the NAACP aren't exactly right-wingers, are they? So he just laid it out. And these people are basically standing on dead Black bodies to pursue their agenda. And their agenda encompasses a lot, but I'll tell you what it doesn't encompass: saving Black lives. In Minneapolis and in New York City, you have Black community leaders who are speaking out against the Defund the Police initiative. Most Black people don't want to get rid of the police. Now, they want reform, but they don't want to get rid of the police because they know who's going to suffer the most if and when that happens. So let's see what else he wrote. So near the end of the piece, he kind of gives a plea. He says, we welcome our white brothers and sisters in this struggle. In fact, we need them. But I must ask them to remain humbly attuned to the opportunity of this movement and to reflect on whether any actions they take will truly help establish justice or whether they are simply for show. Now, I hate to call him naive, but I'm thinking that he wrote this knowing, but he probably isn't naive. He probably wrote this knowing that they weren't going to hear him, because white progressives do not care about racism and white progressives do not care about Black people. Now, the rank and file ones, they actually think that they're doing a good thing. I mean, he even mentioned that a lot of them have good intentions, but they've been misled by the people who are giving them their orders. So you've got a mix. You've got people who actually care, but they're misguided. And then you've got people who really don't give a crap, which are more at the top. And they're basically doing this because they know it's going to harm Black people. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But what I wrote in response to that is, will the white progressive protesters finally start listening to the voices of those they pretend to represent? Not likely. Some of these folks might feel that they are helping, but by ignoring the pleas of Black Americans, they are showing the same type of paternalistic racism that they have always displayed. In a sense, the tendency of white savior progressives to disregard input from their Black allies sends an implicit message. Don't worry, you poor Negroes. We know what's best for you. And that's exactly what's going on here. They think that they know what's best. You remember what Jakari Johnson was saying? Or that wasn't his name. Wait, was it? Whatever. Yeah, Jakari Jackson. That's what he was saying. When the Black activists would go to have a conversation with them, it was the white people that came over and pulled them away and said, don't talk to them. They literally think that they know what's best for us. And Black people on the left know it. Black people in the middle know it. Black people on the right know it. And this was a subject that I was talking about on Liberty Nation Radio. Tim Donner, the host, he asked me, how is this going to affect the election? I think a lot of Black people are going to stay home. And the more this stuff happens, the more I think that more that Black people are going to stay home. They may not go to Trump. I'm sorry to tell you that those Rasmussen polls are lies. They're not going to go to Trump, but they're probably going to stay home. You'll have some that go to Trump, but I think most are just going to stay home, or they're going to hold their nose and vote for Biden and vote Democrat down ticket. But I think more and more it's being exposed that the progressive left doesn't have the interests of Black people at heart. In the words of Kanye West, they don't care about Black people. So, and again, this is the reason why the white progressive leadership supports riots. It's why they help to incite them, send people to go engage in them. This is why Antifa does this stuff. This is why they want to abolish police, because it's like Sonny Johnson always says, if they want to be the party of the poor, they have to keep you poor. If they want to be the party of the downtrodden, they have to keep you downtrodden. I added that last part, but still, it's been shown that riots have a horrible economic impact on Black communities. The LA riots did. Every other riot that has happened in the Black community has had long-lasting impacts, which is why they're supporting this. Now, I know that sounds cynical. I mean, because it seems like, most of them think that they're doing a good thing. No, I give them too much credit because they're not stupid. Again, the rank and file people are stupid. I mean, sorry. I mean, if you say that you value Black lives and you're destroying Black communities, you're stupid. But the leadership who incites them to do the stuff, they know exactly what they're doing. And so that kind of brings me to the next story. I'm going to get some water real quick. Seattle. Sucks about Seattle is that I actually like the city of Seattle. I've been there a bunch of times when I was younger. I went to Bumbershoot, all that good stuff, but I don't know about now. But anyway, recently, I think this was on Thursday. It was sometime this week, because basically, what the Seattle City Council did is they passed an ordinance that would basically disarm the police. So it would ban the police from using blast balls, pepper spray, and other tools that police would use to stop riots and to also defend themselves if necessary. Now, before I go into this, I understand that there have been police who have overstepped their bounds when it comes to the riots and the protests. I understand that there have been a lot of riot police, or whatever you call them, that have harmed peaceful protesters. Even here in Austin, we had a few minors get shot by beanbags, and that was a huge controversy, still is. So I do understand that police make mistakes, and they also do horrible crap on purpose. There are bad apples. I don't think that the majority are bad, but this stuff does happen. So I'm not trying to downplay that. But basically, if you take away these tools, it's going to make it that much harder for them to defend themselves. So they passed this measure that was designed to disarm them, which would place them in danger. And then a federal judge actually temporarily halted the order. So that's a good thing. So this hasn't actually gone into effect yet, and hopefully it doesn't. But basically, the Seattle police chief, who is a Black woman, has been pushing back against this for the past few months, because Seattle is one of the places where the defund the police movement is really going strong. So she sent a letter to the city council, basically telling them how stupid this idea is. She didn't put it the way I just did, but basically explaining to them why their ideas are ridiculous and why it would put police officers and civilians in danger. So part of the letter, she says I don't know if I'll read that part of it. Yeah, that's not necessary. So, but she did point out that there have been violence at other demonstrations. With that whole chop zone, 2 people were killed until the police were actually allowed to break it up. And she noted that the protests that have been planned for the future are likely going to break out in violence. She says, there is no reason not to assume we will continue to experience property destruction, arson, looting, and attempts to injure additional officers throughout the week and beyond. And this is, I love this. I hate it, but I love it. I hate that she has to do it, but I like that she's willing. She said that she is not willing to place her officers in danger if they don't have the tools necessary to defend themselves. She basically said, if you guys pass this and if you disarm my officers, I'm not sending them out there. So you can forget about it, basically. She said that it would be reckless to have them confront this level of violence under the current legal restrictions imposed by the council. And I don't think that these are even the first restrictions that have been placed on Seattle police. So it's like they're not really able to do their job, and people are hurting because of it. I mean, I told you, two people died. This is happening in other cities too. A lot of people have died nationwide. So basically, she's fighting this battle, and I don't know if she'll win it or not. I really wish that more residents of Seattle who actually want to be safe would come out and protest this stuff and protest their city council for this. I think a lot of them agree with it, but I think a lot of Seattle's residents probably wouldn't agree with getting rid of the police, even the left-leaning ones. I know that's the case here in Austin. I mean, there have been plenty of left-leaning people here in Austin that would probably disagree with me on a lot of different issues, but they don't want the police gone. They want reform, but they don't want the police to lose their budget. Or maybe if they're going to cut the budget, make sure that it's just cut with stuff that's wasteful and things that they don't really need. They're more reasonable about it. And I think that most people in general are pretty reasonable, but the attention goes to the ones who are on the fringes. It goes to the people who basically make their living by riling people up and pushing for extreme measures that may sound good and make you feel good, but they don't actually do anything, at least not anything positive. So here's what I think is the motivation behind it, and I've already alluded to it, but if they manage to succeed at this in Seattle or in Portland or even in Austin, because even though there are a lot of reasonable people here, that the defund the police movement is still going strong here. Sean King is bringing his stuff over here to try to get them to drastically cut the budget. What if they succeed? Who's it going to harm? So the people who are pushing for this, they're not going to really suffer from this, right? This is something that I wrote in the article that I did on this. I said, will those in Seattle who are pushing to disarm and defund the police actually reap the consequences of such a measure? Or will they sit protected in their posh homes and watch the inevitable carnage resulting from their actions on CNN? I think we all know which one is correct here. They're not going to be affected by it. If need be, they'll hire private security because they're rich enough to afford it. Who's going to be hurt by it? It's going to be the poor, the downtrodden, mostly minorities, who have to deal with the rising crime levels. And in these cities, they don't make it easy for you to get a gun, so you're not going to be able to protect yourself, which is exactly by design, right? Any idiot could figure this out. I'm sure if I got a child in here right now, if I got one of my kids in here and I asked them, does this sound like a good idea? They would tell me, no, it's not. If I ask them who's going to hurt, they'll know who it's going to hurt. Anybody can figure this out. So, which is why I always assume that they're doing this on purpose, because they want to hurt the Black community so that the Black community will continue relying on them. They always do it, and then they blame it on Republicans. I don't think that strategy is going to be very effective going forward. And I talked about this on the Red to Black show too, but the problem is that if the GOP isn't trying to compete, it doesn't matter if more and more Black people find out that the Democrats are using them, lying to them, and purposely hurting them to get what they want. So it's kind of sad in that regard, because it's like, well, who do I choose? It's just the lesser of two evils. I mean, I can't vote for Republicans because they're not here. I mean, I can't vote for a Republican mayor because there are none running. And on the left, I have these people. So I have to pick from the left or the left and just hope for the best. But that doesn't mean that it's not important to continue exposing this. It doesn't mean that it's not important to keep talking about this, because I think the more people know, the better the chances are that people can affect change. So let's see. You remember Charlemagne the God saying he's disgusted with Biden after he said Trump was the first racist president? Yeah, that was awesome. I probably should have talked about him too, but I just don't care enough. I mean, Biden is Biden. And yeah, that's all I can say at this point. But yeah, I mean, it is sad. I mean, because when I see this stuff, I actually get sad about it, because the people living in these communities, I mean, some of them can get out of it, but some, I mean, it's harder for them, and the left is purposely making it harder. And if you ever wonder why I'm so harsh against the Republican Party, that's the reason why. There's no reason why the Democrats should have the monopoly on the black vote, and it is the Republican Party's fault that this has happened. If you look at the history, which I've been reading a lot about lately, and you see me posting about it, if you know the history, then you know it is the GOP's failure to act that has allowed the Democrats to do this. To me, I liken it to like if you're walking on the street and you see somebody bleeding out because they got shot or they got stabbed, and you just walk by and do nothing. That's what the GOP is doing with the black community, because they're basically letting the Democrat Party do whatever they want to black people, and black people can't do anything about it because they can't vote for another party. So I'm going to keep going hard against the GOP until this changes. And I'm not the only one. But just in case you're wondering why I get so aggressive about it on Twitter, that's why. I mean, because people come to me and they complain about it. Why are you always attacking the right? Why are you always attacking the right? Why don't you ever attack the left? No, if you read my articles, you know I'll go after the left all the time. Basically, and I didn't do this on purpose, but basically the way it works out is that most of my articles are against the left. Most of my tweets are against the right. It just kind of works out that way. Although I do go after the left quite a bit on Twitter as well, especially as more of this stuff is happening. But this is the reason why, because the only way that this changes, I mean, there's a lot of other changes that have to be made, but in my arena, I'm in the political arena. I'm in the media, basically. So for me, my role is to try to change things at a local government and state and even federal government level, and to use my platform to help bring that about. So that's why I keep going after the GOP. That's one of the solutions that would help. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it right there unless anybody has questions. I'll give it a second. If there's anything you want to ask me, my opinion on. Yeah, that first racist president statement was so stupid. Oh, did he forget about LBJ? Yeah, I know LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act, but the guy was a virulent racist, and he was known as being a racist. Being a racist doesn't mean that they won't sign legislation that helps minorities, as long as it helps them too. Woodrow Wilson was a very, very virulent racist. FDR locked up Japanese people during World War II for no reason, or no good reason, I'll say. So yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and head out. But I mean, if you like this video, if any of this resonated with you, please share it. Please share it. I mean, the more subscribers I get, the better. And the more subscribers I get, the more I can do these videos. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll also put some links to the articles that I wrote here in the notes here. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.